Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 9th, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. If we can have roll call, Shannon?
Messina,
Here.
Fleming,
Here.
Ingalls, Lutrip,
Here.
Mandel,
Here.
McCracken,
Here.
Ward.
Here.
Thank you. Can you join me in the pledge, please?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Yep? Okay, good. I need approval of the March 14th, 2023 minutes.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public comments at this time, and this is anything that does not have to do with our hearing this evening. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, so whoever wants to come up first, come on up. Just tell us your name and go ahead.
Hello, Commission. Good evening. My name is Agent Jay with Central Planning. Pleasure to meet you. Now, first, if we could all stand up. We can stand up, right? And then we'll shake. We'll go. It's kind of get the stress out. You know what I'm saying? All right. Today, we need to draft some responses to common planning critiques for super central planning. Those guys have been on my case. I have an assignment due tomorrow, and I spent the whole weekend on a bender at the cantina on Moss Isley, and I got to get this done or else. So I was hoping you could help me. So the first critique comes from economist and political philosopher Friedrich A. Hayek. Quote, "The more the state plans, the more difficult planning becomes for the individual." What can we say? You guys got one? All right, I'll work on this one tonight. Okay. Whew. Another one by Hayek. Quote, "It is those who cry loudest for a planned economy who are most completely under the sway of the ideas which have created most of the evils from which we suffer." What can I say? He counts the world wars amongst some of those evils. Okay, all right. The next one is Ludwig von Mises quote. Otto von Habsburg's old economics tutor. Any Habsburg fans here? Okay, every step which leads from capitalism towards planning is a necessary step nearer to absolutism and dictatorship. Yikes. I'm going to have to do this tonight, huh? All-nighter, just like in college. These next ones are by Murray Rothbard, and boy, is he a pain. Quote, "Statism and central planning lead straight to totalitarianism." Okay. The next one is by Rothbard again. Quote, "All forms of state planning of the whole economy are types of socialism." All right. Okay, these last ones we can kind of like, they're kind of weird and like off the, out of left field. But Henry Hazlitt, he's the former NY Times editor. Okay, he says, quote, "Planning always involves compulsion. This may be disguised in various ways. The government planners will, of course, try to persuade people that the master plan, our 20-year plans, has been drawn up for their own good, and that the only persons who are going to be coerced are those whose plans are not in the public interest." Okay, the undesirables, right? All right, that's easy. They're undesirable. There's a whole bunch of, I just go to the history text for that one. The next one was said by Jane Jacobs. She's an urban theorist. Oh, gosh. She should not have been in the workplace. Okay, she says, quote, "The pseudoscience of planning seems almost neurotic in its determination to imitate empiric failure and ignore empiric success." Okay, all right. The next one is Walter Block. He's a contemporary, and that gets under my skin. He says, quote, "If the electorate finds the central planners problematic, the central planners can be voted out in the next election." Or can they? More than likely, when the government gets its hands on the planning process, the decisions will be made by tenured bureaucrats, not subject to recall. That's me. What should I say? Okay, if we're not subject to recall, why do we have to deal with the public at all? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else have public comment that has nothing to do with our hearing this evening? Just state your name. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Natalie Chiano. I'm here about a former complaint. We had an incident on April 7th in the evening where the power from the antenna array was excessive. and the people were experiencing headaches, tingling of your body, and I had radiation reaction for 4 days. We were at a cafe across the street, and it was tested, and it was to be extremely high. There's other cell towers close by, less than a mile apart. The address is 100 Coeur d'Alene Avenue in Coeur d'Alene. The power density in microwatts per square meter goes as high as 50,000. We went to FCC and asked to tell Verizon Wireless to turn it down. So I just wanted to make that statement. Also, we would like to regulate all wireless telecom facilities, especially in residence and school districts, to require the NEPA report. Okay. Also, we'd like to require all applicants to provide a need to test by an independent third party, please, using the meter to determine if there's a gap in the coverage. I would like to see a cap on the power. The cell phones only need 0.002 watts for 5 bars. And I'm going to leave the rest of my time to Tanya, if that's okay with you, please.
3 minutes per person that speaks, that'll be fine. So if you're finished, I'd appreciate it.
I'm finished, thank you.
Okay. Next person, thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
My name is Tanya Osterson, and I have lived here in Coeur d'Alene for 29 years. Back in March, I sent you an email with a hot link to the Dalton Gardens Wireless Telecommunications Facilities Ordinance that was passed and adopted into law last June. We all were very active in speaking to the City Council and Planning and Zoning, but SUSUP was a powerhouse in getting it passed. I feel like we have a golden opportunity to update the Coeur d'Alene wireless ordinance with this model ordinance that any city or county around the country can adopt. I have looked at your current ordinance and several upgrades are necessary. A cap on power, like Natalie said, being the first. I have done meter readings on 5 cell towers around town, and they all put out an excessive amount of microwave radiation. The 2 on Ramsey are high-powered macro wireless telecommunication facilities. Who authorized the apartments to be built around the macro cell tower on Prairie and Ramsey? Your current ordinance states that stealth design is required for micro cell facilities in residential zones. There should be no WTFs in residential zones. All cell towers should be at least 1,500 feet away from the nearest residence. Any cell tower less than 200 feet tall is not even regulated by the FCC. The antenna array at First and Lakeside on top of the 10-story apartment building puts out excessive radiation, and we all felt it on the evening of April 7th. Headaches, tingling in parts of our body when we were at a cafe across the street. This is radiation poisoning. I reported this to the FCC, and they acknowledged my formal complaint and are looking into this. Currently, Kootenai County is being sued by AT&T for denying their conditional use permit for the cell tower they want to build next to the Potlatch Hill neighborhoods. This would not have happened if the county had a strong ordinance in place that protected the residents. Their current ordinance states a WTF need only be 300 feet from the nearest home. The toxic radiation spewing from cell towers affects everything within at least a mile. We would like to see all neighborhoods and school zones free of any WTFs. Put them in the commercial zones. Cell phones need only 0.002 watts of power. Everything else should be hardwired, i.e. fiber optics to the premises. The federal government prioritizes end-to-end fiber optic projects because fiber optics is superior to wireless. Compared to fiber optics, wireless broadband is slow, expensive, unreliable, easier to hack, prone to fires, unable to handle future speed requirements, and not even proven safe. Engineers estimate the lifespan of hardwired broadband to be near 100 years, and wireless broadband a mere 15 years. Over time, fiber optic will prove to be much more economical, with an investment return within 5 to 10 years. With billions of federal dollars now available for fiber optic broadband networks in underserved areas, fiber is more affordable for Idaho than ever before. Let's take back our power at the local level. Your hands are not tied. The law is on your side. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Public comment? Okay. We need to come up to the podium again. It's okay.
I have
we-
more copies, but not,
You can just leave it with staff if you want to.
okay.
Um,
After.
Just state your name, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to share with you tonight. My name is Ingrid Castle, and I live in Hayden. My sister lives in Coeur d'Alene, and I visit quite often. I am here today to share with the Coeur d'Alene Planning Commission the main reasons I see some serious issues with the current wireless ordinance in Coeur d'Alene and why it needs to be updated. By the way, I was wanting to leave the same event that they were at. I was like, and my sister said, "Oh, a half hour," and I'm like, "Oh my God!" We were all experiencing sickness, and the speaker could hardly function. But anyway, first of all, the wireless telecommunications facilities, or we call them WTFs for short, that you have allowed to be placed in residential areas and neighborhoods are classified as industrial equipment. Let me remind you that these are residential zones, and placing industrial equipment should be outside of the current allowable facilities placed in residential areas. Second, there is no cap on the radiated power output of these WTFs. The FCC, for all communication applications, this would be radio and all those kinds of things. Even shortwave or ham radio, they require that, and so this is true also for wireless telecommunications facilities, that they provide service using the least amount of radiated power. The FCC specifications were only for supporting a cellular voice phone call or text, and not for internet surfing or watching of a YouTube or movie via cellular cell phone. The latter would require a stronger signal with more radiated power output than needed just to make a phone call. For years, we have had a tax added to our landline phones for the development of fiber optics for use in accessing the internet and where the radiated power is contained in the fiber optics lines in your home. So we were, checking, just for the decibel milliwatts. We do dBm for short, and it's an abbreviation, dBm, for the power ratio in decibels of the measured power referenced in 1 milliwatt. So it's used in a ratio, microwave and fiber optic communication networks. It's a convenient measure of absolute power because of its capability to express both very large and very small values in a short form. So I wrote all this down for you guys to be able to read it, so you can see that none of the towers here are even rate, from an A to an F. They're all in the F range, excessive. I noticed things like, the bees, for instance. The bees, they call it colony collapse disorder. Well, that's been proven to be from wireless radiation. We have a whole case in Eagle, Idaho, that's on the front page of Wire America and Idahoans for Safe Technologies. But, oh my, I didn't finish. So you're just going to have to see that these towers, much of this stuff, but it's affecting our biology, and it's just really a matter of time before, there's lawsuits. And I don't like to see the city be liable because of failure to have a protective ordinance. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishes to come up? State your name, please.
Hello,
Hello.
my name is Ann Wilder, and I live in Priest River, Idaho. Please add my statement to the public record. I am the secretary for a local group called Wire Idaho that advocates for wired internet at the municipal level and educates municipal governments about the hazards of wireless microwave radiation from wireless telecommunication facilities. and how they, the governments, can legally protect their residents from these hazards, I have a short PowerPoint that I would love to present at your next meeting. On August 13, 2021, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals in the Environmental Health Trust and Children's Health Defense versus the FCC, case number 20-1025, ruled against the FCC and their claim that the safety standards they officially adopted in 1996, 27 years ago, were adequate. The EHT submitted 11,000 pages, 447 peer-reviewed studies on these hazards, and the FCC was ordered to address the impacts of RF radiation on children, the health implications of long-term exposure to RF radiation, the ubiquity of wireless devices and other tech developments that have occurred since the Commission last updated its guidelines, and to address the impacts of RF radiation on the environment. As of this date, the FCC has not done this. Therefore, Massachusetts cities are now requiring the FCC to meet these requirements prior to approval of any more wireless facilities. Coeur d'Alene can do this too. As well, Coeur d'Alene can adopt the ordinance that Dalton Gardens adopted last summer, which can be found, and I've got the list, and I'll email this so that you can just click on it, so it's easy to find. So here's why. For $8,000, Dalton Gardens hired attorney Andrew Campanelli, an expert in wireless telecommunications ordinances, who has won numerous attendant cases and authored many protective local codes to write their ordinance. The $8,000 includes full representation by Mr. Campanelli for the life of the ordinance. Coeur d'Alene can adopt it as it is, tailored slightly for Coeur d'Alene. Or you can pay for experts to do it all over again, which makes no sense. Idaho attorney Norm Semenko helped with the ordinance, and he has stated to me that he will happily help adapt this ordinance to any city who wants it for a substantially smaller price tag. The Dalton Gardens model ordinance asserts all the rights reserved to our local communities by the FCC and case law. It does not prohibit anything. It is detailed and comprehensive. Our chairperson for Wire Idaho is Sue Supp, a retired attorney who lives in Dalton Gardens and was the powerhouse behind getting the ordinance written and approved. She was unable to be here tonight, but she did tell us and has stated that she will come and help you go through that ordinance and discuss it, all that it entails. And I have her telephone number on here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then you're the person who's going to handle this. Thank you.
Hello, just state your name.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Brooke Baguette. The U.S. government stopped funding research on the health risks of radio frequency radiation exposure in the 1990s, with the exception of a $30 million rodent study published in 2018 by the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences National Toxicology Program, which found clear evidence of carcinogenicity from cell phone radiation. The biological effects of low-intensity microwave radiation emitted by cell phones and other wireless devices could increase oxidative stress, free radical stress proteins, cell death, and DNA damage, even to subsequent generations. The preponderance of research published since 1990 finds adverse biological and health effects from long-term exposure, including the DNA damage. More than 250 scientists who have published over 2,000 papers and letters in professional journals on the biological and health effects of non-ionizing electromagnetic fields produced by wireless devices, including cell phones, have signed the International EMF Scientist Appeal, which calls for health warnings and stronger exposure limits. So there are scientists who agree to the harm. There's a revolving door between the membership of the SCC and high-level people within the telecom industry that's been going on for a couple of decades now. The industry spends about $100 million a year lobbying Congress. It reminds me of how the tobacco industry and had the advertising power and downplaying the risks of cigarette smoke. So let's talk about the 5th generation of cell phone technology, also known as 5G. It is different than the 3G and the 4G that preceded it. For the first time, in addition to microwaves, this technology will employ millimeter waves, which are much higher frequency than the microwaves used by the 3G and the 4G. Millimeter waves can't travel very far, and they're easily blocked by fog or rain, trees, and building material. So the industry estimates it's going to need another 800,000 new cell antenna sites. Millimeter wave radiation is largely absorbed through the skin and the sweat glands, the peripheral nerves, the eyes, the testicles, based on the body of research that's been done on the millimeter waves. In addition, this radiation may cause hypersensitivity and biochemical alterations in the immune and circulatory systems, in the heart, the liver, and the kidneys, and the brain. Millimeter waves can also harm insects and promote the growth of drug-resistant pathogens. So it's likely to have some widespread environmental effects for the microenvironments around the cell antenna sites. As my predecessors have stated, Dalton Gardens had an ordinance that worked well to keep telecom limits within reason for health and not harm. So please consider the Dalton Gardens ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to make public comment before I close public comment?
Mr. Chair, may I make a comment?
Sure.
We don't have public testimony too often, but when we do, it's thought through. You know, you ladies thought through this. You have some very, concerns. I don't know if I understand them all, but we're just an appointed group. We run this through our comprehensive plan as directed by the city council. So I don't think it's part of our responsibility, it's certainly not part of our education or training or anything, to consider legislation in this matter. I would suggest that you talk to either the city or the state, someone. It's nice to have you come here, but I don't believe we can do anything in that area. I don't think that's part of our authority. And the first commenter, the same thing. If it's a comprehensive plan, I don't know these different individuals you talked about. You talked pretty fast. But if it's in the comprehensive plan, we work that way. We are an animal of the city council. And we have, certain codes that we follow, certain pledges we take, and to try to do the best we can. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we'll go into staff comments.
All right. Well, good evening, commissioners.
Good evening.
Just wanted to remind you, we have our development impact fee workshop next week. So that'll be at lunchtime. We'll provide you with some food since we're working you through the lunch hour. So should be a good discussion as we're kind of kicking that off. You'll be getting updates from the consultant team on the work they've been doing so far related to the capital improvement plans for the different departments. We will not have a June meeting. We did not receive any development applications, so you have a free month for that.
Oh.
I wanted to mention for our Historic Preservation Commission, the Garden District, so we'd received a grant from the state through the State Historic Preservation Office to do a nomination for the Garden District neighborhood to become a historic district. So it goes through this National Register of Historic Places is the nomination. And so that's going to be kicking off as well. We've selected a consultant for that effort, and so that commission will be doing kind of an internal kickoff this week, and then we're looking at the week of June 19th to do the community kickoff. So we'll be publicizing that on the website, social media, doing postcards to any of the property owners within the Garden District, but that's kind of kicking off that process. If it goes all the way through for the nomination, it is an honorary designation. It doesn't have any limitations for what can happen to a property. It's more just kind of a great designation and recognition of the historic resources in the area. So I wanted to mention that. And then also you received some flyers up at your seats on the dais. The Connect Kootenai, so that's the organization that is merging with the Regional Housing and Growth Issues Partnership. It was CDA 2030. It's expanded its focus to be more regional. There's an open house there's two options, so you can either attend June 1st or June 2nd, and those are open to the community, kind of talking about what's been going on and bringing together partners to talk about the 6 focus areas, including the work on the housing and growth issues. And then we're looking at a fall regional joint planning commission workshop again. So like we did last year, we'll be bringing that together.
Great. And do you have to register for this Connect Kootenai?
I don't believe
Okay.
so. Nope.
Show up. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
commission comments at this time?
Mr. Chair, I have a question of staff. We got in our pamphlet, or in our packet, the Idaho Ethics in Government Manual. Are you going to give us a little highlight of this? I think it's very good. I mean, what's happening just down the road or down the river a little bit gives an example of how important this is and how well we understand it. I think you've talked to us before about this, but maybe you want to cover some high points at some later date, some way, because it's important.
I can certainly do that at the commission's discretion.
I will request of the chair then. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to go into a public hearing, and the first and only item is the applicant is Tilford Homeowners Association. Location is Tilford Place, a modification of the open space area within the Tilford PUD. And Hillary's going to give us a little background on this.
Yes, I am. All right, so yes, you've already mentioned the item is here before you, so applicant Riverstone Holdings. They were the original owner and developer. The owner that's applying for this tonight is the Homeowners Association for Tilford Homes. And then they are requesting a modification to the open space that was originally approved. And I'll kind of walk you through kind of what happened with the history of that and what they are seeking this evening. As mentioned, they came before the Planning Commission previously, so it's 2017 is the date of the PUD item. So on October 10th, 2017, the Planning Commission approved the planned unit development for this project and the preliminary plat. It was just done in one phase, and the total number of dwelling units approved in the project was 13. They came back for a minor modification in January of 2018, and that just made a few changes to the existing parcels and reducing the minimum rear setbacks. And then they came back to allow, or to have a change to their design. If you remember, kind of initially it was kind of craftsman bungalow style, and then they allowed some changes to that as well. So this is the area map. I think you're all familiar with it. It's in the Riverstone area, and Tilford Lane is here leading to Riverstone Park. Here's a closer up image of Tilford Place. This again is the Riverstone Pond. The request this evening, we're just focusing on the open space, so while I'll walk you through all the findings and you'll have to adopt the findings, really the only change is related to the open space. And because of some of the history with how the project developed, not all of the open space amenities were completed. So the project is in non-compliance right now. And so with this modification, this will, if they make those changes, if the changes are approved this evening by yourselves, then that would bring them into compliance, which would be, I think, important for the city and for the homeowners association and the project. So this is the original, the plat, and then the PUD map that was approved in 2017. So you can kind of see the main entrance here, their private roadways, and then I'll show you on the next images kind of the open space tract areas. The property, as I mentioned, it's small, it's 1.66 acres, and we've done all the legal, excuse me, notices for this hearing this evening. So really, they're just looking to get the project into compliance with open space. So this site plan map shows the areas that were approved for the open space. These areas here. Kind of zoom into those so you can see a little bit more. These are platted as tracts, so they're open space tracts. So this is the first one here. This is the tract A, and this was community open space. It was intended to be a fenced dog run area with irrigation and amenities. Tract B is this one here. It was intended to be a flower garden with irrigation and a greenhouse amenities and all-weather surface pathway for motorized access to said amenities. And then there's a sewer infrastructure in here. And so it was intended to be a drivable surface for that as well and to allow the wastewater department to access that. This one is tracts C and E. So this is the area that was intended to be the kind of the raised veggie beds for them with irrigation and then a greenhouse and amenities. And then E was a picnic table area for use by neighbors and Centennial Trail users. So this is right along Tilford Lane. So I'll walk you through each of the findings. There are 7 required for this request this evening. So the first is finding B8A, that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the 2042 comprehensive plan. You can see here is the general location of the property, and this is our new future land use map that's in our comprehensive plan. This zooms into the subject property. As kind of reviewing the PowerPoint, realized that we did have a little error in our comp plan map. So you can see it was actually colored yellow, which was residential, even though it was a PUD. But so for staff report, we indicated it's planned development because it is that. So that kind of meets the intent of what the future land use is. Finding B8B, the design and planning of the site is or is not compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. So again, it's already built out, everything's completed, just need to finalize the open space, but it is in this urban mixed-use neighborhood of Riverstone, and Belle Rive is here to kind of the southwest. Finding B8C, that the proposal is or is not compatible with the natural features of the site and the adjoining properties. So as mentioned, it was already built out, it was done in one phase. The site is relatively flat, and kind of already showed you where the open space areas are. I'll talk to you about what improvements have been made and show you some images of that. As noted, it is private, so there is a gate, and there's a fence around the neighborhood. So this is that first tract A that was noted. So just kind of some minimal improvements have been done in this area. Some trees and some lawn and some irrigation. This is tract B, so this is the area where the wastewater infrastructure, so you can see kind of the grass grid here with the grass growing through that, a bench with the grass and the irrigation, a little bit of landscaping on the edges. This is tract C, so this largely just grass with a rock wall at the back with a little bit of rock garden, some plants interspersed in that. Again, irrigated. And then this is the last one, the tract E, it's along Tilford Lane, and so it's really just kind of grass with the landscaping. These 2 images are the snow storage, and you can see that at the end of where the roads kind of terminate, and there's the fencing there with indication of no parking in the fire lanes. Finding B8D, that the location's design and size of the proposal are such that the development will or will not be adequately served by existing public facilities and services. So as noted, city's already serving this, but when we did route this PUD modification to the department's water and wastewater, had concerns with the tract B where the trees were placed, because they can't have any trees kind of within the easement because they need to be able to access the pipes, as well as I don't want to have the roots interfere with that. So there is a condition you saw in the staff report. Finding B8E, that the proposal does or does not provide adequate private common open space area as determined by the commission, no less than 10% of gross land area free of buildings, streets, driveways, or parking areas. Common areas shall be accessible to all users of the development and usable for open space and recreational purposes. So as noted here, when it was approved, the tracts all met that requirement, so it was platted with the 10% required for open space. They just didn't complete all of the open space amenities that were originally approved. So again, as noted, here's how it met the 10%, and then these are the amenities already read off to you. And then here is what has been completed. So for tract A, they did the shade tree, some grass irrigation and bench. There's a fake hydrant in there, which was intended for the dog use for the dog parks. Tract B, the bench, grass irrigation, landscaping with that grass grid, a drivable surface for wastewater. Tract C has the grass irrigation and rock garden. And then tract E is the grass irrigation, landscaping, and trees. So these are what the areas, so the same tracks, just kind of walk you through what they're proposing. So for tract A, I'll walk you through that. They would like to omit the dog fence, so it's going to be a fenced-in areas. They want to omit the dog run and the pet waste station and the trash dispenser. They'd like to replace it with 3 lilac bushes, vinyl edging, basalt rock, and 2 wraparound benches that would go around the existing trees. And I should mention that the HOA representatives worked with the Riverstone and John Stone on this to kind of figure out what would be appropriate for them for this open space, for these changes to the amenities. So tract B, they would like to omit the community flower garden and omit the storage shed, metal planters, and the horseshoe pit, and replace with the 2 silver maple trees, 2 wraparound benches. Tract C, they'd like to omit the community herb garden and the planter boxes, omit the greenhouse, the metal planters, and the crushed basalt gravel, and replace with the 2 silver maple trees, the 2 wraparound benches. And then lastly, tract E, to omit the picnic table and to replace with a 3x3 at foot address rock that will say Tilford Place, and then keep the landscaping that's already in there with the lawn and the irrigation. So finding B8F, that the off-street parking does or does not provide parking sufficient for users of the development. This has not changed. They've met it from the beginning. And lastly, finding B8G, that the proposal does or does not provide for an acceptable method for the perpetual maintenance of all common areas. So they do have the HOA in place to do the maintenance, so that has been satisfied. And then as noted, there are some conditions that are recommended by staff. The first is just regarding final inspection of the open space improvements to make sure they all get completed, and then the bond money would be released back. And then the other one I mentioned previously was water, wastewater would want to review the placement of those trees to make sure it doesn't interfere with the easement on tract B. So your action alternatives this evening are to review the request and make findings to approve with additional conditions, deny, or deny without prejudice. Happy to
Thank you,
stand for
Hillary.
any questions.
Questions? Go ahead, Peter.
Let me see if I understand this process overall. That we have zoning, every piece of property in the community, our community is zoned. And based on that zoning, you have a certain right to use that property any way you see fit that meets the zoning standards. In addition, we have building codes and setbacks on it, and you must meet those standards also.
Right.
Whatever they may be, and they're well known. There are some exceptions. One exception is a planned unit development, where the property owner believes they can get more value from the property by modifying, changing some of the current rules and codes we have in place. And they bring it before us, and we as a group look at that and say, now, is there value to the city to award this a PUD stance? And we go through some discussions with the developer and ourselves and certain parameters, and that results in a planned district. And it has a series of items in there, one of which is the open space. And we pride ourselves with the community saying, community, once we approve a PUD, that's the way it will be. There's not going to be a lot of switching. And if it is, it has to come before us for a good reason. And I guess that's what this is before us tonight. But as I understand the reasoning, it's because it's cost. It's too much. We don't talk about cost. We as a group, we talk about values. What about our value with our comprehensive plan? Is there value there to our citizens, to our community? And we agreed in this case there is. Now, the value of the developer may be a little different, but they still have values. I'm just, well, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, if I may address some of that,
Yeah,
and then the
go ahead.
applicant team as well would want to.
Sure.
Staff has been meeting with the representatives for a couple years, trying to figure out how to get this into compliance. So some of it is cost, yes, but some of it is that the residents that live in there, the property owners, didn't want some of those amenities. They didn't want to have a dog run. They thought that really wasn't useful. They didn't want to have garden boxes. They weren't going to use those, or, the greenhouse. So I think a lot of it is just after they've been living there, they're kind of realizing, yeah, we don't want to have to maintain those things, but if none of our residents are going to use those, why should those be amenities in our open space area? So I believe it is twofold, and we'll let the applicant and the representative speak this evening and kind of answer those questions that you have. But we provide the provision for you to approve modifications. We did that for Belle Reve as well with their open space, so there's the ability to do that if it's appropriate.
What kind of modification was that for Belle Reve?
We changed some of the open space areas when the final open space tract at the very southern end came forward and asked for some home sites. And then we looked at what were the open space areas that were approved and kind of had to come through and change how the public was or wasn't allowed to access some of those areas, the connections, what were the amenities within that. So we did make some changes through that process.
But the open space 10% is still met.
Correct. Yep, so it's not reducing it from 10%. So that's still required, and it's not required to be open to the public. So that's, the code says it's private. If they want to open it to the public, great. But the code says it's for users of the development, so private is perfectly acceptable.
Hillary, if you go back, I don't know, maybe a couple slides. I mean, the new dog park down there is really close. I think it's on one of the aerials, but
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I could see how you have a much larger, dog park in the Atlas Millfront area. I can see how some of those, when this was approved originally to now, may not be desirable. I guess might not be on that aerial, but it's kind of right in there, I
Right
think.
there.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's our width on those tracts for the most part?
I was looking at the one
We had
today. I think they're
25,
20 to 30, something
30.
about approximately.
I
in
would
width.
caution, I work on landscaping drawings all day long. The silver maple gets up to 80 to 90 feet tall, and in 2/3 of that becomes its diameter. So you're looking at a 65-foot diameter tree. You might want to rethink that one unless you go for a dwarf one. It just would overwhelm a fairly narrow space. So much as it looks good, not so good when you're that tight together. So I'd look at that as a species that may not be desirable in there, but maybe your tree gals will weigh in on that one. I just think it's an
That's
oversized
a good
tree.
point. Maybe with
It's
the
an
open
oversized tree in such a narrow space. So,
space, maybe the tree shouldn't be specifically part of the request, like this,
yes,
variety of
exactly.
the trees, right? 'Cause they
Red
can work with
maple
our
and silver.
urban forester.
They're all
and-
big. They're all in the 90-foot, high, full species, wide, broad base on them.
Could that be just modified in the request?
Oh,
They
yeah,
work with the
we're
urban
not-
Say
forester
trees to
to
Yeah.
coordinate, yeah, the urban forester.
They just ought to
would
pay
help.
attention or they might regret their choices.
Right.
Okay, no other questions, Hillary?
No.
Okay, thank you. If the applicant can come up?
Move the slides as you.
Just state your name and I'll swear you in.
Matthew Niemela on behalf of Riverstone Holdings LLC, the applicant.
Do you solemnly swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Commission. As the staff report indicated, the applicant here is Riverstone Holdings LLC, which was the original developer of this PUD. We have brought this application for the amendment of that PUD on behalf of Tilford Homes Homeowners Association, which is now the association that has taken up management and use of the open space that we're here discussing today. This really is, I think, a straightforward request in the sense that we are just requesting a modification to the open use based on new developments on the ground and requests that we have received as the developer from the Homeowners Association. We are happy to carry the burden on behalf of the association because we want to make sure that this is a place where our community members want to live and reside. To that end, what we're talking about is making these open spaces more user-friendly for the association in the sense that we're not asking for any longer, really a dog park or flower gardens or storage sheds or other, items that are going to require maintenance or that, the community has to, I guess, elect to use. Instead, what we're asking is really to replace these amenities with trees and benches where the community can gather and they don't have to worry about maintaining sheds or maintaining flower gardens or community gardens, etc. We could go through some of the factors of the considerations, but I think, again, it is really straightforward in terms of the request. The development is really already complete. We're just installing park benches and trees if allowed by the commission. We're not changing the nature of the open space. We're not changing anything about the community or that's going to impact the community around Tilford Place. This is all internal, and we're talking about the open spaces in this PUD. And I want to touch on a couple points that were raised. This really is not an issue of cost as it relates to Riverstone Holdings. We have the PUD, we have the the open space amenities that are in that PUD. Could Riverstone go ahead and complete those? Perhaps. But we'd be doing so over objection of the homeowners association. Again, what we're doing is we are coming to the commission saying, look, we have received feedback now that this has been actually developed and people have bought and moved into these homes and the association is running. They want us to change the plan. We have tools to allow us to accommodate that through the amendment process, and that's what we're doing. As it relates to the staff report, I don't think there would be any objection as it relates to the type of trees that are placed in these open spaces that we've requested. We're happy to work with the commission to select a different variety or species of trees. And also, we don't really have an objection as to the placement of where those trees will be. Of course, we have no problem placing trees outside of the easement, but the commission can approve with conditions, including where we can place those trees, or perhaps tract B, we don't put trees. I'll leave that to the discretion of the commission. With that, I have nothing further to add, but I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Questions? Go ahead.
One question. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Let me ask you, the HOA in this case is the 13 homeowners, right? Not Riverstone Developer?
Correct. The homeowners association
They are
is
the ones
separate.
who are finance applicant.
Could you repeat the question?
They control the common open space, and they are the ones this application is filed on behalf of, the owners themselves.
Correct, and we did submit with our application a consent by the HOA signed by the president, authorizing us to bring this application, and the application was also signed by the HOA.
Okay, thank you.
So when the homeowners association was formed by the current people, then it was realized that these improvements had not yet been done, and they would be done at a future date at their cost, not at the developer's cost?
Well, I don't know that I can speculate as to what the individuals who bought the homes knew or didn't know. But again, the application is brought because and we have members of the HOA here who can speak from their experience. But from our perspective, as the applicant, as the developer, if the commission says, stick with the original PUD, I guess those are that's the decision. But from our perspective, the application is brought for the benefit of the HOA, because the HOA is the one who manages these open spaces, and they're going to have to continue to pay for, through dues and assessments, these sheds, these dog parks, these flower gardens, community gardens, et cetera, in the future. Whether or not they're saying, bring this application and modify the open space because we simply prefer the open space as it is, or whether or not we don't want to pay for it in the future. I don't know. I don't want to speculate to that, but I believe that there will be other members of the HOA who can speak to that later.
Can I just add something on this? When this PUD was approved, at that time, the houses weren't even built. There was no ownership involved at that time. So the open space plan was best case scenario, this is what we should put in this development and stuff. And if I'm understanding this right, as this got developed and the homes got bought and the request has come through the homeowners association via the developer to make this modification, the plan for the open space is stayed the same as far as the 10%, but the use of that open space is more conductive to the people that are living there at this particular point in time. Before, they had a plan, but it's changed. This is the first that this has come in front of this commission like this, and we're not setting any type of precedence, but it is the wish of the homeowners association, I think, to change the use so it's better suited for the present residents that are in there, not taking away from anything else.
So we're going to have testimony from the homeowners association, not the developer?
We're going to have testimony from anyone who signed up.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, the HOA representative will speak
Okay.
and provide input. And then if I may clarify a
Sure.
point too, and you saw the condition in there. So condition number 2 from planning references that there is a bond that we're holding. So that was for open space. So that was from Riverstone Holdings. So the developer gave the city a bond that secures the cost of the open space amenities that were supposed to be placed on the site.
And we're trying to bring this into compliance and get the bond back to the developer and hopefully entertain the wishes of the present homeownership that's in this development. If I got that right.
Correct, and just, I'll refer to the record,
Sure.
the consent of Tilford Homeowners Association signed by Ms. Brown, March 29th, 2023 is submitted in the record, and in that consent, the HOA president, acting on behalf of the association, notifies or confirms that our map that the staff just went through was approved, and they have confirmed and asked us to move forward with this application for the current HOA.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next person, I have Jeremy Shoes, who did wish to testify. Come on up. Just give me your name and I'll swear you in, Jeremy.
Good evening. My name is Jeremy Shute.
Do you solemnly swear and/or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Go right ahead, Jeremy. Thank you.
So good evening. I am a resident of the Tilford HOA. I'm speaking here tonight as a representative, as the president of our HOA is currently out of town. So I'm here just to express our agreeance in these modifications to the open areas. As a resident who uses these open areas ourselves several times throughout the week, we got together as a community and in our meeting back in August discussed these open areas and what would best serve us currently living there. We do have some that are snowbirds as well, so they also participated to, as well as any of the homes that are used for alternate purposes. So we have a consensus on these changes, and we feel that if you approve, will best serve our current needs as residents. I was the second homeowner to purchase a lot before the PUD was completed. So during that process, a lot of these open areas and the amenities that were in them, I can personally say were not brought to my attention. At the time, it wasn't much of a concern. Our HOA dues were pretty affordable, right around $100 a month. In the 3 years that we've been here, we've had to increase our HOA dues several times just to keep up with the maintenance, specifically lawn and snow removal. We've seen a couple of years with some pretty heavy snowfall, and our snow removal open areas have exceeded the space allowed, and we've had to move snow into some of these tracks from year to year. As the community right there between us and Atlas, or between us and the Centennial Trail, starts to develop this year, we were moving snow outside of the Tilford HOA community. We will have to start trucking that snow to an alternate location to remove it if we have a heavy snowfall again. So we've considered all of the factors in maintaining our space, as it is a private community. Some of the stuff along Tilford was removed for our liability purposes, so that if somebody's out there on our property using our open space, hurts themselves, something that, our HOA is going to have to obviously defend. So we wanted to keep it minimal but effective. And we do have a couple of seats out there. I definitely think the plan that is being proposed is going to benefit all of us in there. So thank you very much.
Did you have enough time to cover everything you wanted to cover?
I did.
Don't worry about the
I can keep
timer.
talking some more, but you guys are here late in the evening, so I appreciate that.
Now, the snow removal, you brought up that issue. You were at one point putting it outside on Tilford Lane, or is it? And you're not doing that anymore. 'Cause
So
now you've
we-
got to truck it out.
It
I
was
imagine.
pushed across into there was an open space
Right.
there. And so we're using the snow removal that is used throughout Riverstone now. So what they'll come in and do is with the big loader, not with a snow plow on the front of a truck. They're coming in with a loader and moving the snow, especially when it's heavy, because it's a gated community. There's only so far you can put it. And then once it does go into the snow areas, they have to stack it up. Snow loader can only stack the snow so high before it starts blocking the driveways. So we've moved some of that snow. We had 4 to 5 foot high snow banks in the tracks in between the homes.
Okay.
And we've pushed that stuff back. And even with that, we still have to look at removing snow by the truckloads.
All right. So basically, all the snow that's on your property is staying on the property until you have to truck it out, or whatever you have
Correct,
to.
yes.
Okay.
Everyone's moving their snows to the side
Right.
because we know that if we push it into the road, it just adds additional constraint and costs to the HOA.
Okay, that's more clarity. Any other questions? No?
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Erica Baker is in favor but didn't want to speak? Okay. I have no one else to speak. If no one else wants to say anything, I'm going to close public testimony and bring it to the commission for discussion and a motion. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I'll make a comment. As I understand it, there are 13 homes here. That's it. Now, I wasn't on this commission in 2017 or 18, whatever it was approved. But when I was looking over the summary of what was there and what they're trying to replace, 13 houses, a dog park, a shed, a vegetable garden. I just thought either someone was trying to provide a great inducement to get this approved, or they just miscalculated. If the homeowners are happy with some landscaping and trees in these areas, that makes a lot more sense to me than what was originally shown in the plan. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a perfectly good suggestion. Don't understand that bond situation. Apparently the city has no way to act on that, but as far as what they want to do, I really don't have a problem with it.
I would agree. I think staying kind of in our lane on this one, if it's in theory, when it comes before us and the amenities that a developer might think that residents want, I see how that could change in 3 years, given once residents are moved in and in the area and evaluating costs and use. And I think we should be careful not to dictate what amenities are most important or valuable to them, as long as we maintain our code and open space requirements. I see it's pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Well, I had my mind made up, sort of, but it was very helpful to hear homeowner association talk, because that's really the people that are affected. You know, I sort of agree with you, Mr. Ward, that, you know, the presentation initially could have been very grandiose, but the homeowners association, they had a very good point, and I'm going to support this.
I would agree that, and I wouldn't agree as a blanket statement on PUDs that everyone can come back and change it all after the fact. That's my big fear in a Coeur development where we're committed to some fairly big elements. But this is a small, homey community. Why would we induce them to force them to maintain things that they don't want? That's just silly. So I'm in full support of this.
Okay, great.
Should I make a motion?
Sure, go right ahead. Thank you.
You're good?
Good.
Okay.
You're so good at it, Lynn.
This matter having come before the Planning Commission on May 9th, 2023, and there being present a person requesting approval of PUD 2-2-17M1, a request for a modification to the open space and amenities that were approved in existing planned unit development known as Tilford PUD. The applicant is Tilford Homes Homeowners Association, Inc. The location is plus or minus 1.66 acres, located along West Tilford Lane in the Riverstone development. Findings, the justification for the decision, criteria, standards, and facts relied upon. The Planning Commission adopts the following items, B1 through B7, which is notification, existing land, et cetera. B8, pursuant to Section 17.07.230 Planned Unit Development Review Criteria, a planned unit development may be approved only if the proposal conforms to the following criteria to the satisfaction of the Planning Commission. B8A, the proposal is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. This is based upon the following policies. Community and identity. Coeur d'Alene citizens are well-informed, responsive, and involved in community discussions, and we listen to you. That the environment, objective ER 2.2, encourage publicly owned and/or private recreation facilities for the citizens of all ages. And this is a private community, and you've determined what you need for your community. Objective GD 1.5, recognize neighborhood and district identities. You have your identity, and we shouldn't, rain on your parade. B8B, the design and planning of the site is compatible with location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. This is based on our open space, our location of the building itself. All key points have been addressed in off-street parking, et cetera. B8C, the proposal is compatible with the natural features of the site and adjoining properties. I'm going to skip all that. That's just a whole lot of stuff. It exists. Can I say a little more? B8D, the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, services, and this is based on you exist. B8E, the proposal does provide adequate private common open space area as determined by the Commission, no less than 10% of gross land area free of buildings, streets, driveways, and parking areas. The common open space shall be accessible to all users of the development and usable for open space and recreational purposes. This is based on the commitment and follow-through of the developer to provide that 10%, and it's up to you to figure out what to do with it. B8F, off-street parking does provide parking sufficient for users of the development. This is, again, based on what was built out. B8G, that the proposal does provide for acceptable method for the perpetual maintenance of the all common property, and the HOA has been established and is a functioning body. C, order, conclusion and decisions. The Planning Commission, pursuant to the aforementioned, finds that the request of Tilford Homeowners Association for approval of the planned unit development, as described in the application, should be approved, with the following special conditions: that water and wastewater, that no trees be planted over Tract B. I would address the tree size. You do want to look at that, diameter and space, maturity, those things get big. Planning and a final inspection is required to verify all open space tracts are complete. The bond amount of $59,385 held by the city will be refunded upon final inspection sign-off.
Second?
Second.
I have a second by Mandel. Roll call, Shannon, please.
Fleming?
Yes.
Mandel?
Yes.
McCracken?
Yes.
Dutrip?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Messina?
Yes. Okay, PUD 2-17 and 1 passes. Congratulations. Call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
All approved? All
Aye.
approved?
Approved.
Yes.
Saludo.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Hasta luego.